Hello everyone, Stepan here. There's been a major upset in the chess world in recent days, and that was the young Vincent Keymer, a 13-year-old German international master and an absolute chess child prodigy who won the Grenke Open tournament in Karlsruhe, Germany. It finished yesterday. He scored 8 points out of 9 rounds with 7 wins and 2 draws, which is an astonishing result in an open tournament for any strong grandmaster, let alone for an international master who is only 13-year-old. And in the tournament, there were actually 4 grandmasters who were over 2,700. Ettiene Bacrot from France, Richard Rapport, Wang from China, and Dmitry Andreikin, and Alexey Shirov was also playing, and many other super strong names. And the young Vincent Keymer was actually the 99th seed in the tournament, so coming in first is incredible, absolutely incredible. And he played the Grenke Open in 2016. He finished in the 90th place, and last year he was 69th. And the thing is, you have the Grenke Open A and B groups and the Grenke Chess Classic. And in this year's Chess Classic, Magnus Carlsen is playing Fabiano Caruana, Georg Mayer, Leon Aronian, and all the superstars. And the winner of the Open tournament gets to play in next year's Grenke Chess Classic. And that means that young Vincent is going to play with chess superstars next year. And with this tournament victory, of course, he scored his, I'm not sure which grandmaster norm it is, I think it might be his second. And his result is absolutely incredible. But he's rated just over 2,400 and he's 13, so we've had grandmasters younger than him and international masters, but the way he's playing, his attacking style and his chess is just astonishing, and I think he could go far. At the moment, I think he's being coached by Peter Leko, so you can't have a much better trainer than that. And in this game, he had the black pieces against the French superstar Richard Rapport, who is super strong. He's 27-13 at the moment, I think. And Rapport was white. He opened with pawn to d4. Vincent replied with d5. We have c4, e6, the queen's gambit declined position, knight to c3, knight to f6, bishop to g5, the modern variation by Rapport, bishop to e7 defending, e3, h6, all standard moves so far, bishop retreats to h4, castles, rook to c1, and you can't get a more standard queen's gambit decline than this. Knight b to d7, c takes d, e takes d, bishop to d3 and c6. And we get the standard Karlsbad structure, which is one of the most important pawn formations in chess. And the point is, with this structure, it actually it was thought of much less at the beginning of the 20th century, because usually the players thought that black had a great position here because he had a 4-2 pawn majority on the queen side, and there was no way white could ever penetrate his position until the concept of the minority attack was created in chess theory. And now this is considered to be equal and both sides have something to play for. White will usually have a plan to push with b4 and b5 and to create a minority attack to create a weakness on the c6 square. So this is a normal Karlsbad structure and the standard queen's gambit decline position. The game continues with bishop to g3, moving in advance and controlling some more key squares, c7 and b8. Rook to e8, h3 in this position. And it's worth noting that in this position you might think that there is a tactic that works, and that's knight to b5, and the point of knight to b5 is that you have a bishop staring at c7 and looking at the queen, and it seems that the queen is trapped. However, if Rapport had a bad day and played knight to b5, the game would have been immediately lost, because after c takes b5, bishop to c7 seemingly winning the queen, there is a crushing move black can play in this position, and I'm sure Keymer would have found it, and it's bishop to b4 check, gaining a tempo on the king and creating a valuable escape square for the queen, so that would have been completely losing. But Rapport is 27 2700 for a reason, and he plays he plays h3 in this position, making some room for the bishop, not going for the losing tactics. Bishop to b4, pinning the knight. Knight to f3, knight to e4, and using the pin on the c3 square. Bishop to f4, and this was he was also attacking the bishop with this move knight to e4, and the bishop moves to f4, which is a bit provocative because it's offering the g5 tempo on the plate, but it's questionable how useful it is. c5 in this position by Keymer, using the fact that the knight is pinned and probably trying to gain a tempo on the bishop as well. Rapport castles, and now bishop takes c3, giving up the bishop pair, which is a questionable decision by Vincent, because white now practically and positionally speaking stands better. The bishop pair is amazingly strong in these positions, and the only fact that's keeping the position equal is that black can push with g5 and close down the dark squared bishop to the diagonal, which is a bit inferior, because if it's only looking at b8, then it's not that useful. But if you look at these bishops, then white stands better. But however, it's his decision, and the position is still equal. It's just another way to approach it. Bishop b takes c3, knight to b6, knight to e5, dangerously centralizing the knight to a much more active square, f6, chasing it away immediately, and knight to g4. And a much more safer move would have been knight to f3, because then he would have the h2 square and he wouldn't be offering one more tempo to black. But he plays knight to g4, and in some positions, of course, he's threatening bishop h6, knight h6, or even knight f6, and getting 2 pawns for the piece, which is actually dangerous with the queen looking at h5 and this bishop over here. So it's not a bad move, but it's double-edged. c4, gaining a tempo on the bishop to b1, retreating all the way back, and now h5, gaining a tempo on the knight. And from this position, Rapport made the decision to sacrifice a piece. There's actually no way to preserve both the pieces, because if the knight takes the h2 square, then the bishop would be cut off from it, and after g5 and h6, the bishop would be lost on g3. So in this position, he actually played knight to h2, giving up the bishop, and now after g5, first Vincent plays Rapport plays queen takes h5, giving up the bishop, not even retreating, and g takes f4. And this position is now in Rapport's style, and it suits him because he's a very strong attacking player, he's very imaginative, and that's his biggest asset. He knows how to create complications in any position, and the fact that he gave up a piece isn't that significant, and it doesn't mean that Vincent Keymer could win. But it gives Rapport a lot of attacking prospects here. First, f3 in this position, chasing the knight away and opening up the bishop to the h2 square, h7 square. Knight goes to d6, and now queen to h7 check, king to f8, queen h6 check, king to e7, queen to g7 check, and now note that the king only actually has one square. The other option is to cover the check with the knight. Keymer goes for king to e6, rook f to e1, now threatening all kinds of dangerous moves, pushing with e4 or taking on f4, immediately checking the king. He plays rook to e7, attacking the queen and creating an important escape square for the king on d7. And of course, if Richard now grabs this pawn, then the king could just go to d7 and be much safer. So he plays queen to g4 check, not giving the king an opportunity to go here. And Vincent continues with f5, but that's a weak move actually, and Richard is able to grab the pawn and sacrifice a piece temporarily. He plays bishop takes f5, and after knight takes, queen to g6, and the king has to now retreat to d7, and the knight is loose, so queen takes f5, getting a piece back. He plays king to c6. Of course, if he plays king to c7, then the queen could take f4 with check, but Richard grabs the pawn anyway. And now the material, if you count it, white has 3 pawns for the piece, 3 pawns for the bishop, but his knight on h2 is completely inactive. It's too passive. Black's bishop is actually amazing. The rook and the queen are pretty active, and once this rook gets activated, black will actually have a much better position. But for now, white's pawns seem scary, and you can imagine all of these guys marching up the board and becoming ladies. So the position is materially equal, and both sides have something to play for. But I think I would rather have black here, because if he manages to survive the coming onslaught, which he did for the most part already, then he's just a piece up, and 3 pawns, even though they are materially equal, can't compensate for a piece. So bishop to e6, e4, queen to g8, queen to h6, king to c7, getting the king back into safety, and after the rook moves, preparing to put the king on b8 to be completely safe. King to h1, a prophylactic move by Richard, getting the king out of harm's way. Rook to f8, and now you can see what I was talking about. Now his pieces look extremely menacing here, looking down at the e end of the g file, and the bishop is dangerously looking at h3, so there is already a lot of tactical possibilities. And now he should just get the knight into play too, and he will be almost completely winning, because the pawns are immobile for the moment, and as long as he can keep up the pressure, then Richard stands no chance. He tries rook to e2, doubling rooks, rook h7, queen to d2, the queen was attacked, king to b8, and now the king, who's made a walk from half the board, is now actually completely safe on b8, and it's white's king who is in trouble. Rook c to e1, doubling rooks, d takes e4, and now even though he doubled rooks, of course, he's not taking with the rook, because that would give black's pieces the important d5 square, either for the knight or for the bishop. So he takes with the pawn, getting rid of that possibility. Bishop to d7, preparing perhaps to come to this diagonal, which is very active. Rook to f2, rook to e8, queen to f4 check. This was a valuable tempo by Richard, because he got to position his queen to a much better square with tempo. King to a8, knight to f3, rook to f8, queen to h2, retreating, knight to a4, attacking c6, and this is now becoming very problematic for Richard. He has to defend, so rook to e3, a6, queen to e5, bishop takes h3, and now this move was the completely winning move, which busted white's position, and Keymer found this winning tactic. First of all, Rapport can't take the bishop. If g takes h3, then rook takes h3, rook to h2 defending, but black would have a crushing move, rook to g3, and rook to g3 is attacking this knight twice, and it's also preventing it from moving, because black is always threatening rook to g1 checkmate, because the queen is covering, so the knight can't move. And the best move would be rook to e1, because he has to cover in some way, and the knight is falling, so rook would take on f3, and that's it. So after bishop takes h3, Rapport played the only option. He played king to g1, but this is the lesser evil move. So now rook to g7, triple attacking g2, knight to h4 defending, but still now rook takes f2, and this is just busted. If he takes with the king, which he did, rook takes g2, knight takes, queen takes, and you can see this position now. It's actually, once again, it's materially equal. White has a rook for 2 pieces, and he has an extra pawn, so it's 6 against 6 in points, but black has too much initiative in this position, even though the knight isn't active yet. The king runs to e1, queen to f1 check, king to d2, bishop to g4, queen to e8, trying to get a perpetual check, but there's nothing here. Rook, king to a7, and now queen takes a4, grabbing the knight, but that doesn't mean anything, because after queen to f2, this rook is falling. The king can't go here, because the pawn is defending the square, and after the king moves somewhere, then just queen grabs the rook on e3, and that's it. And black would have a bishop for a pawn and a completely winning position, and what's worse, white doesn't even have any checking squares to the king. So yeah, this was an absolutely incredible game. I must say that Vincent played a great defensive game, but he was a tad lucky, because Rapport had a chance to create even more initiative, and Vincent should be congratulated on his defensive skills, but Richard definitely could have attacked a bit more precisely. But in any case, this accomplishment by the young German international master is just inconceivable, and I hope he continues to play this well in the future. I will be covering the rest of his victories from the Grenke Open, just to make sure you could see how he plays when he is attacking, because he did have 7 victories and 2 draws, so defense is not his only strong suit. Okay, everybody, thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked this tactical brilliancy by both Rapport and Vincent Keymer, and see you soon with more chess. Thanks for watching. Bye.